I want to welcome Andy Kropa here to our class today. And I have admired Andy's work, really this project that he's here to share with us ever since he created it, I guess it was in 2015. And I like it for a variety of reasons. And just as I kind of talk about it, I'm going to share some images here. Um, and so Andy Kropa's project, I think I always refer to it as Garry Winoglass, but that's a little confusing. Andy, why don't you explain it and give us the elevator pitch for really what you're doing here?
Yeah, Garry Winogrand was a photographer I admired very much and learned about him very early when I started doing photography. This work is like a very deliberate attempt to try to recreate his look, his style, and also a lot of the same locations in New York where he used to photograph. The big difference is I was using the Google Glass, which is a wearable computer headset, and that was all I used to take these images. So
now, I had asked Andy for a photograph of himself wearing the glass, and this is what he gave me. And I guess, are you seeing this photo here, Andy?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm holding it. This is a picture done with the Google Glass itself, and it's a reflection of me on my Apple iPhone.
Oh, that is crazy. And then how would you trigger the shutter?
Yeah, so if we have time, we can just get right into it because I have the actual glasses here. People are always interested to see, I guess, what they look like, and around the time they came out, it was a very big controversial issue in San Francisco and in other places. People were terming anyone with these, they were calling them glass holes for a while, a little term of derision. But I was fascinated by them for a number of reasons that I'll get into when I start showing work. But just for Timothy's question, they sit on your head like this, and there's a tiny little display. You might see a light there. I'm actually able to look at that and see things. I might be able to say, like, what's the weather, or what time is it? And so when it's activated, you can say, okay, glass, take a picture.
Oh, that is crazy.
And if you heard anything, that just went off. There's three ways you can take a picture. By speaking, which I'd say I have almost never done because it's the most time consuming. The shortcut is just to press a single button that's right on the top, and that's just to trigger the camera. But the way I use the most of the time, and for most of the photos we'll be looking at, was a third-party developer packed into the glasses when they first came out, and can explain here. If you see it, there's an infrared sensor on the inside that was used to track your eye, and that was needed for the software to work on the glasses. But this programmer created a side-loaded program that could let you wink to take a picture, and that just opened up this whole world because you could be very subtle. I think I just did it.
Yeah.
And they also introduced these shaded portion. So I'm not going to wear these the whole time, but just so we have context of the technical way these pictures were made. So if I put on my shades, they kind of blend in and look normal, especially if you're in New York City, where there's a little more tolerance for things that aren't completely normal, I guess.
Yeah.
Many people would not notice in the images you went through, just in this introduction. That combined with the fact that I had no other type of camera sort of singling me out as a street photographer or a photographer, someone where I might get more of a reaction to people being photographed. In this case, people pretty much had no idea because it was just kind of became this cloak of invisibility because of how small the camera is and the fact that I didn't have to physically do anything to make these images.
That's wild. That is wild. I will,
Um,
Andy, Andy had written a paper for this that I wanted to read as a little bit of an introduction because it kind of addresses the times, and I think it'll kind of set this work up nicely. It says, in the not so distant past of 2015, when the streets of New York were vibrant and bustling with people, I set out to make street photography in the style of my idol, street photographer Garry Winogrand, using Google Glass to photograph unobserved. I first used Google Glass for experiments to augment memory as a result of my mother developing Alzheimer's disease years earlier. As a lightweight wearable camera, Glass could create a life log made up of photos taken at predetermined intervals, then played back as a film. Although I ran into technical limitations after I noticed that certain photos in the test I reproduced bore resemblances to Garry Winogrand's work by random chance, I then set out to purposefully reproduce this effect. For the next year, I walked the same New York streets made iconic by Garry Winogrand's photographs, removed by several decades and equipped with a technology that was completely unimaginable in his time. Wearing glass with an attachable shade allowed me to photograph without drawing attention to myself. I triggered the shutter by winking. The glasses have come equipped with an infrared sensor to track eye movement. And I'll just kind of end that there. And I thought that was a good way to kind of segue into how you originally, kind of got into this. But even to back up a little further, why don't we talk about your early interest in photography? Like, how long have you been a photographer?
oh yeah, definitely. I really started photographing as a teenager in middle school. Both my grandfathers on each side of my family had been like really avid hobbyist photographers, and so I got into learning about what they had done, and so I started taking classes and learned to develop film and print images in the darkroom. I thought that was amazing. So that was one of the earliest things that drew me to it was all the kinds of image manipulation and experimentation you could do in the darkroom. Then I was like editor of my high school yearbook and worked on the yearbook in college. Became an art history major to learn the history of images and art, and then moved on to graduate school in Chicago where my focus was like social documentary photography. I was at the Institute of Design in Chicago,
Yeah.
and actually ended up being one of the final graduates of their photography program because it had actually ended up being phased out at the same time I was there. And then after that, I moved to New York in 2001. I was an intern for Magnum Photos. That's what got me here, but I've stayed now ever since. So my goals then were to become a photojournalist and go out and work for Life magazine. Not that it really existed anymore, or National Geographic, or all these places, and kind of the image of a photojournalist that you would just draw to mind around the end of the 20th century. But I saw a lot of things change. Definitely the technology changed, and I think, you know, there's been, you know, these several big waves where we moved away from film into digital, that caused a lot of disruption too. And I think after that, it was like the iPhone and mobile photography, and then now it's, you know, that's just continuing apace. I think the technological revolution in photography, and the best way I've heard it referred to now is like social photography is kind of the era we're in.
Huh.
I ascribe to that too. Yeah.
How define social photography?
Well, it's not just the fact that you know, we're taking pictures on our phone, but that's also the means that we're able to publish those and share them with the world. So so it's I think it's a combination of the technology used to make a photograph, and then the fact that it can just be instantly everywhere, with the apps and things we have now. So
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like photography has gone from being this kind of craft-driven thing to something that's just like exhaling now or something like that. It's like I'm trying to think of an equivalent. It's like the equivalent of like a phone call or leaving a voicemail message or something like that. Like it's that it ebbs and flows and everyone does it and everyone kind of knows what a good one is, you know. So that, yeah, the photography is definitely changing, you know, and it's much less elite, you know, than I think it probably ever, or if it ever was something elite, you know, it's not anymore, you know, I think.
Mhm.
But back to your project. So you got a master's degree in art history, but then also then moved to New York City to be a photojournalist. Is that true?
Oh, no, my master's was documentary photography.
Oh, it
So,
was. Oh,
yeah,
okay. All right.
yeah.
All right.
My undergraduate was art history. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
What
Sorry
kind
about
of,
that.
when you were graduating, what kind of photographers were you looking at? Like, who did you like?
Um,
You
yeah, I mean, well, Garry Winogrand was, as I said, someone I discovered like pretty early on, and I think through him almost learned about a lot of other photographers like Robert Frank and Lee Friedlander, from around that era. I think I remember in high school seeing like Dwayne Michaels and really liking a book um, of his, and then yeah, as it was later on, I mean, a lot more photojournalists would be the type of work I was looking at a lot, and going out to you know, try to cover events in New York, or just get jobs, pick up jobs to cover things, and yeah, I mean, those are some of the earlier people I looked at. They, you know, they stayed with me, and a lot of, you know, had many mentors, I think, when I came to New York, that I always looked up to their work, um, and have taken various workshops with and things like that.
Right, right. Now, you brought some early projects that you had done before you started to do the Gary Winogrand project. Can we start looking at that work? Yeah, it
Okay,
looks
and
wonderful.
now you should be seeing two images there. These are my parents, my mom and dad, and my shadow and a little self-portrait. This series is called If You Say Goodbye to Me, and this is in 2011. My mother was experiencing early onset Alzheimer's, and so I went home to stay with my parents for a period of time in Iowa. Um, so I started just using the iPhone in a more serious way, like at that time, and um, these are hipstamatic.
Oh yeah.
You might recall that. Um, you know, I was fascinated by this because cameras I've always thought they're really big and bulky, and so I thought this was amazing, like something so small you could produce work with. And I think at this time too, it was there were sort of accomplished photojournalists that were going out and working with just the iPhone, so there was this kind of thing around it then. But that was what I documented this period with. And I'm showing these because just in the introduction you read, this experience, just seeing my mom go through memory loss and the things that happened to her, and the what it does to a family going through that, just really, believe it or not, led to me wearing Google Glass out on the street in a little bit of a roundabout way, but I will get to that full explanation.
Yeah. Hey,
Um,
so this looks like it's like when the iPhone was it wasn't iPhone 1, but it was probably like iPhone 4 or something like that. Does that sound
I'd
right?
say I'd say 4. Hmm.
Yeah, and there was, I mean, myself, I remember there was a fascination with how good these pictures could be, and then with Hipstamatic, you could post-process them, and it kind of felt magical, and it felt kind of, it was before it became like exhaling, I think, but it was still
Yeah.
a little wonder to it. What was your interest with the phone, and also with, say, Hipstamatic specifically?
Well, I mean, this also did relate to memory. There's a photo that's not in here, but we would, I'd spend a lot of time with my mom looking at the photo albums, and I just, I thought it was a little bizarre that here I am, 30 years later, and now my phone has something that can make pictures look like all the faded out family photos we're looking at. So it's a little bit that aesthetic drew me to use that, because
Yeah.
these are like my this is my family photos of this summer that I was back home, while things were getting worse for my mother. And so I think that was the impetus. And then once I started, that just became the way. um Hipstamatic was just my thing at the time, and I think maybe for a lot of other people too. It was a big deal, like, but just not for very long.
I thought it was a big
You
deal for
know.
me, and I thought
Mm,
the pictures did seem like, with the square and with the way that you could mess with the color, I thought it did feel like memory. I would enjoy going
yeah.
back to my hometown and taking pictures with that, and so I think it was probably their intention. Do you think?
Oh, yeah. It's so funny because I know, like, Apple brags about just how awesome their phone is, and how many, it has like thousands of internal parts that make this brilliant image, and then you have app makers out there just trying to basically distort it and lessen the um, clarity,
Oh yeah.
in a way. But that's people like it, so I think it just took off.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it was trying to feel analog too, I think was probably part of it
yeah.
a little bit. And what I would say to my students here is, as questions come up, feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll find time to, ask these questions. So, and then we'll have more time at the end as well. We forgot to mention that. These are really beautiful pictures. Who's putting on the shoes there?
Oh, yeah. These are both my mother there too. Um, her hands and then her feet. She was an elementary school teacher, so this photo on the right is just kind of represented to me how some of the abilities she had lost, as an artist.
Yeah.
That she was just working on this coloring book like that. And then yeah, the shoes, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she had to walk. So if someone wasn't there to go out on that walk, that would be scary, you know,
Yeah.
because she could get lost. So that was a daily ritual,
Oh
wearing
yeah,
those shoes. Yep.
those are nice.
Um, so so that you know what happened. You know, sadly, my mother passed away, but it kind of led to me reevaluating like photography and what I was doing just myself. Um, um, you know, having gone through sort of a life changing event, I was just trying to reevaluate it. It's like I'm contributing something to the world or what. I mean, I don't know. I was going through a lot of different things. Um, but I started to learn about something called life logging. And here's just an article that was in 2010. Um, and this device made by Microsoft called the SenseCam, it just had a camera that would automatically go off, and you just wear it on your, you know, around like a medallion, and you'd end up with these like stop motion videos at the end of the day. And there was a lot of research done. You know, it could help spur memories. And I was just so fascinated by this because it's, you know, it's more of a scientific use of photography, but it's something that's like could legitimately be very helpful to people. And I just became more and more interested in this and in assistive technology. Um, and then in 2013, I saw this that was made by Google, called Google Glass, and it's a first wearable headset computer. It had a camera on it, which I remember at the time caused a lot of consternation among people, kind of freaked people out. Um, but they made you actually apply to for the honor of buying the the hardware.
Oh yeah, now I remember
Um,
that.
and and we were all called glass explorers. And you know, they were trying to you know, I think they wanted everyone to be wearing these. It didn't quite happen that way. I think there were some bumps along the road. But my intention was to uh, make try to enhance this life logging process by through the benefit of including your point of view, because the other cameras were the point of view of like your shirt, so
Mhm.
it's not exactly what you're seeing. And so I thought this could be a tool that could be used. Maybe it'd be inconspicuous enough that it could just be worn on a daily basis, and you could keep a record of your memories that way. Go back through and even if you've forgotten something, like, you know, that picture, again, just having time sitting with my mom and looking through my family albums, you know, I would notice that, you know, her demeanor would change too, and like all of a sudden we could communicate and talk about other things. And I thought, well, that's really related to long-term memory. I thought, could photography impact the short-term memory, which is a, you know, major thing that people lose with Alzheimer's. So I guess I'll cut out the boring parts where we, you know, tried to make this happen, but um, the the glass would get like too hot, and the battery life and the storage capacity, all these things were issues. So you know, that experiment didn't really go very far, at least on glass itself. Um, and so then after that, I was just kind of using it for fun also. And this is a different project I use, or I made using Google Glass, and this is called Look Ma No Hands. This I
Oh,
did around 2013 or 2014. And the idea was, well, what's something I can do with this camera that really I can't with any other camera? And so I was thinking about using my point of view, but also showing both my hands, because with any other camera you'd have to have at least one hand free. So
right.
so that's really the entire concept. But I just kind of set about to do this, and something about the projects I guess I'll be talking about is like, which I don't think I told you, Timothy, before, but they're all really made for myself, and the way I kind of drive myself to continually create like work is because of Instagram, because I set out to add a new post each day, and I just kind of stick to that, and that's been annoying at times, but I think overall, it helps to just be more proactive.
Oh, it gives you a
um
deadline and it gives you a hole to fill
yeah.
every single day.
Yeah. So this was something I did for that initially,
Right.
and then just I had a just pretty. I mean, I don't know if this was like a smart theme or a dumb theme, but I just went with it, and there's hundreds of these, but I think these are among my favorites, and also like them together on a grid. I think that this project really needed to be seen, with it's almost like the more the better,
Yeah.
because that way you get the point
Oh, yeah, for sure.
of it than individual images.
Yeah, at the time you were making these images, say, what was the role of photography in your life? Were you still working like you had worked as a photojournalist, correct?
Yes. So I was a freelance photojournalist. Then about 2008, there was the first big financial
Oh, yeah.
crash, and that changed a lot of things. And then so I began doing a lot more event and entertainment photography, and that was with Getty Images, and then the Associated Press, who I've still been working for,
Mhm.
although not recently.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
been nothing to cover. Uh, so yeah, so I was doing that, but I mean, none of that work was like all that personal for me at the moment. So this was just an outlet to have fun, and you know just to explain another sort of technical aspect is, you would go out and I mean, actually, maybe we'll come back when we're going through the street images, but you would just take as many pictures as you wanted, but then when you came home and connected to a Wi-Fi network, then the photos from the glass would get uploaded in the cloud and into your Google Photos account. So that would be kind of the first time you'd see them.
Mhm.
You can see a little bit in the little box screen that's up at the top, but it's pretty small, so it's hard to evaluate what you're getting. But I guess so that's a long way around of saying, one of the things I started feeling like when using this camera, this super high tech camera, was that it felt a little more like I was shooting film again, just because of the process um, was a lot less instant. There was no like looking and checking out the screen after you shoot something. You'd have to wait. It's almost like when you're developing film, you'd have to wait for a few days to see it later, and
Oh yeah.
I think that gets lost. I think that helps you appreciate some of the magic more when a few days have gone by, and then the pictures are popping up on your screen, and you're going like, oh wow, that one actually worked, you know.
Yeah, no, the mystery can still be there. I had a friend who used to tape up the back of his digital camera because he never wanted to see the image immediately, you know. He wanted to be able to go back home and then look at the stuff. And so yeah, I think there is a history of photographers who started with film being a bit uneasy with the immediacy of digital, you know. With this project in mind here, there's a question from Stanley Phillips in the class.
Okay.
And Stanley asks, he said, is it necessary for you to have a project to begin, or do you begin and it evolves into a project? That's an excellent question.
Yeah, I think that might be a good segue even into the next. But yeah, for this one I feel I thought about a little bit, um, and said maybe that could be a project. So I think there was a little bit of thought beforehand for this. But so, I guess I'll just skip ahead and we'll just start these if you're ready.
Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
for this project, I'd say it came about like a little more organically because what happened was I was generating images, trying to make this life log concept work, and just experimenting. Um, but every so often, I'd see like a picture and sort of think, oh, that could almost be a Garry Winogrand picture, and it's either it was a combination of just the fact of being in New York, or whatever the focal length of this particular camera is. I don't even know how those numbers work for
Yeah.
miniature lenses, but yeah, just sort of, there was a few images that would just sort of make me, cause me to make that association.
Hmm.
Um, so then I mentioned, I was putting in a new post every day of my project, whatever it was. And at that time, it was the two hands.
Hmm.
But I was eventually, I was just done with it, or I didn't have any more ideas. And so I thought, well, I'll do this now as the next project, and see if it works or not. Um, and I thought it was like actually worked really good. So I think, and this is a woman going into the stairs of the Metropolitan Art Museum. And here's some businessmen that just, I think, evoked. So all the time I was kind of seeing Garry Winogrand images in my head, but not necessarily specific ones. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think there'd be any way to recreate a specific one. And my intent wasn't at all to parody his work, because I love it so much, but just as a kind of a hypothetical exercise of, imagine, he were still shooting now and could use newer technologies now, and what might it look like. Um,
There was something
so yeah,
about
and then
Oh, there was something about the image of the three guys walking down the street that you just showed. Go back one. Yeah, like
mhm.
that, the body language and catching a mid-step and having the steps in sync and everything. That's what suddenly feels like the Winogrand work to me. Like and I don't know, was it intentional, or are you just like pushing the button and then when you edit it, you realize, oh, there was that thing in sync there.
Yeah, there was a lot of um, failed attempts, so there's not really any control over the camera. There's no f-stop, meter or shutter, anything. So you get what you get. These are converted, of course, to black and white. So that just kind of, to add to the effect, and they're just not as good in color either. But yeah, the other way I related, I guess, to his process, and why I thought it was so interesting is, he's just famous for having, passed away with, hundreds or thousands of rolls of undeveloped film, and he was just so prodigious at shooting. And so that I sort of connected to the idea of a camera that doesn't stop, that would just continuously. So then I sort of thought maybe Garry Winogrand was the first life logger, but he only had film. He couldn't use digital like we have now. So I kind of had that thought going on too, but I think it's a little more conceptual. The kind of mechanics of taking these photos, I mean, you couldn't, no matter what you do, there's a little bit of a lag time before, from either when you wink or even press the button to when the picture is taken. So, I learned a little bit of a way where I would just pause to shoot an image. You really didn't have more than one chance. So that's why there were, the majority didn't work at all. But when there was a nice one, I was very happy. I'm like, I'll keep that,
right,
and throw it to the mix. But that's common for a lot of street photography. I think too, is that, you're going to throw away over 99% of what you start out with. But there's definitely cameras I think you can be faster with,
right.
or shoot more frames of one situation, and probably increase your odds of getting a good image.
Oh, this is a great
This
photo.
one just kind of cracked me up, and Garry Winogrand too. Just I always loved the humor, a little bit of the sarcasm he put in images, and how he could capture people that were, I guess, not looking their, I don't want to say not looking their best, but looking just very unique, the way his images all sort of worked, I think.
Yeah. Now, we saw a documentary in the last class to prepare for your talk that, was filmed in like the 70s of Winogrand on the street. And you've probably seen it before, because there's not that many. And the one thing that he seemed to do is he was able to just be perceived as like a bumbling guy messing with his camera on the corner or something. Like it seemed like he liked to pretend that he didn't really know what he was doing, so people would ignore him or something like that. That was my interpretation of it. And then that kind of leads, and in class we thought like, oh, well, no one's paying attention to him, so he's able to get these images, And then we were kind of connecting it to your Google Glass, where no one knows what you're doing with those things on, I would think, And then that kind of leads to another question here from Stanley Phillips. He says, when you produce your work, is it necessary, as Winogrand would say, to be invisible, or is it not? In other words, did you ever try and go and make the images in the spirit of Winogrand with a regular camera?
Oh, when I was in school, and or when I shot film like all the time, I think, and I think it over the years, I'll talk about this one too. People are really aware of cameras. They're just hyper aware, and now probably every person has a camera of their own. Usually, you could assume. So I think there's less spontaneity on the street now. I'm not too familiar with. I know, like on Instagram, there's just communities of street photography. I'm not too familiar with a lot of the most contemporary work, but from what I've seen, I mean the style of pictures or just the way people presented themselves 30 years ago, I think has changed when you look at the pictures.
Mhm.
So I think it's easier to identify, what era a street photograph maybe came from. Because I think it's just, when it was starting out, it was kind of novel to see someone, I guess, on the street with the camera, and so people
Yeah,
didn't care as much. I don't
right.
know. But yeah, and something that's funny too is I started to, as I did more of these, they started to sort of appear like they were from that era too. And like one thing is even the cell phones. I think in a lot of newer pictures, you just see a cell phone and you kind of pops out at you right away. And as I was going through these, to get ready and stuff, there's plenty of people with cell phones in their pictures and things, but they just don't stand out the way I think. And so then, maybe this just sounds totally crazy, but it's almost like I was trying to think of Garry Winogrand taking a time machine to today, and
Yeah, no, absolutely.
you
I
know,
felt that I was amazed with how dated or how not contemporary these photos seemed. You know what I mean? Like it must be the way you edited the stuff. But the wardrobe and the styles and the fashion, it doesn't seem like 2020 always.
yeah, I don't know necessarily why, for sure, but there is like converting to black and white, and um, I had some tricks. For instance, with this image, I got interested in shooting into the sun like that, and so with a picture like this, I was doing something like this so I didn't get flare. And once I discovered that, I was able to get this to sort of just get the light to pop out in here. Um, and I would sort of do other things like just tilt my head, of course, a little bit. He was known for tilting the horizon. um, and this is the first time I think I've just been like very explicit about trying to um, recreate or make an homage to an actual particular photographer. So that, I
Yeah.
mean, I haven't done that before really or since.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it so this is a Bernie Sanders rally, so 2016. And this reminded, I think there's just sort of vague pictures that sort of vaguely remind me of another picture of his, but of course they're completely different. But this sort of made me think of a picture of a protest in Central Park, I think.
Yeah, there was a
He
guy who
had,
looked like that, like a baby-faced guy. Yeah. I'm wondering what response have you gotten from to this project besides me? You know what I mean? Did people? What did it? How did people react, and did they get it and like it or hate it or what?
yeah, I mean, as well, thankfully for getting a phone call from you, because I haven't done too much with this since I made it. And as I was saying, it was basically presented on Instagram. So any type of reaction I got was just from either my friends, so in the form of likes or something like that. So from my friends, I'd say several of them knew what I was going for. I think if people didn't know, they probably just thought they were, pictures of New York streets. And yeah, they've just kind of, I didn't have a reason to do them other than for myself. I think they look pretty nice on the screen, but you may run into some trouble if you're trying to make prints or something like that. So I didn't necessarily see it as something that could be exhibited, but again, it was I didn't have like an overriding reason like why I wanted to make these other than just to see like could I do it.
Right. Well, I think that's everybody's reason to do anything, really.
Yeah.
But I think what you're trying to tell me is you didn't really use it to try to fuel a commercial career or an art career or anything like that. You simply wanted to.
Yeah, and I think another thing was I thought there's probably no one else is really doing it, and I'm not really aware of anyone else either. But maybe there is out there. I did have the idea that this could be sort of a public thing, and that other people could go out on their own and submit their own images like this. So that was one of the early ideas, was that it could be sort of crowdsourced, and we could get pictures from other cities and around the world if people sort of adopted that approach. But I don't know. I don't think I got a lot of traffic on my website or anything.
Hey, here's a couple questions that came in. What is the most difficult thing that you encounter when you're shooting on the street? Like, what are the challenges of just shooting street photography in this way?
I'd say rain is a challenge. That's never good, but it can be very nice, if you have the proper protections around your equipment. So with this particularly, I didn't have the problem of people kind of stopping and saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" But I think that's something you'll generally run into with most street photography. So that no confrontations. Yeah, I mean, one challenge is nothing interesting happens for quite a while. And then there's challenges just relating to editing, to feeling like you're really close on an image but not quite getting it. And these have not been edited too rigorously, but if you're really getting down to it, you'd be very critical about which photos are just like the absolute A pluses. And
right. Here's another question for you. Are your compositions that you do or did professionally in your commercial work or photojournalistic work similar to your personal work?
Yeah, I mean, I think my style of shooting is not to think about it too much, just work pretty quick. So a lot of these were done that way, but with a camera where you can get a lot more pictures at once, it take more than one frame at a time. Yeah, I think they're strangely are pretty similar. It's attempting to maybe do something different or in the style of someone else with this work. Although something you said too earlier, Timothy, is like, and that I agree with. I mean, I think ultimately, I created something different. So
yeah.
Even with this goal in mind, of emulating Garry, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there is this theory, like when I went to school, there was always this strive that you had to be original. And I think, you know, in the 80s, we could probably trick ourselves into thinking that something was original because you didn't have access to really other things that people were doing. But now you have access to every single thing that everyone is doing. And so I myself as a teacher and as a creator embrace this idea that I encourage students and myself to copy things that we like. Because I do have this theory that you can't ever copy it exactly anyhow, you know? And so it's going to change and it's going to morph when it goes through your lens. Or, I mean, I don't mean lens in a camera way, I mean through your personal filter. You know, and it's like that, oh, there's that game that is the telephone game where like there'd be a classroom of students and someone whispers something to a kid and then by the time it gets to the end, it's something radically different. And, you know, I am a big believer in that you can't copy something anyhow. So just try and it's never going to be the same and you're going to come up with something different, you know. And I really liked this project with that idea because I thought it was a very contemporary way to move forward with the creative process, you know, like here, I'm going to copy Jeff Koons. Exactly. I'm going to make things exactly like Jeff Koons. And of course I wouldn't be able to, but you'd come up with something. And I think that's the root of things like fan fiction and all of these other things that are like, everybody's copying something and then it morphs into something else, you know? Well, I guess my question is, do you feel you would have had the personal freedom or liberty to truly copy someone's work, like say 10 years ago and acknowledge it?
Yeah, that hadn't occurred to me. I mean, I worried a little bit, you know, maybe his estate or whatever would not appreciate me doing it. And maybe it would be a case by case thing. I mean, the only thing I can think of analogous is sort of music and sampling in music. I think that used to be more accepted, but is less now. I don't know who had the show that was just literally printed.
Oh, Richard Prince.
Instagram photos. Yeah.
Richard Prince did that. That didn't go. People didn't love that.
I saw that show. I think that's, you know, the very maximum to where you can take that approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's part of his commentary or the reason he did that. I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I didn't mean copying that. I meant copying.
That was just copying. Yeah.
Yeah. He just copied there.
But yeah, I wanted to make it explicit that you know, this is what I was trying to do and not try to hide that. So I just made it the name of the whole project.
Oh, interesting. Stanley Phillips here adds that Richard Ricard just rephotographs Google Street View as his project. I've seen that project, Stanley.
Yeah.
It's not Richard Ricard. It's he's the guy who does a like photographic history website. What is his name? He's really good. Is that his name, Stanley, or is it something else? There's been a couple people who've had like Google Street View projects, but
then it feels a little different, you know.
Yeah, sure.
That's, you know, finding something this mass amount of data.
Yeah, no, that is it, Doug Rickard. Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, this is nothing like that though. But yeah, even if you go way back though, there was a woman Jenny Holzer, I think her name was, who was photographing Walker Evans photographs and then signing them. Like this is in like the late 80s. You know, she would photograph a Walker Evans photograph. So there are people working in this kind of postmodern way. This is nothing like that though. This is about being out there in the world. And so I think it's more about acknowledging your influences. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little less conceptual than that, I guess. But
right, Sherry Levine. Yeah, this is fascinating. I'd love to see prints of these things. I mean, I don't know how. Like once I saw a show of Bruce Gilden's work that they hung in. They had giant kind of colored Xeroxes, and they hung them in an alleyway in a town. And it was almost like when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, it's just a big Xerox. You don't need any quality. You know what I mean? Like, do you think you could do something like that with me? You know, because once you make something so big, it doesn't really matter.
Oh yeah, I think I know just from friends I have that are work in that industry. Like, I mean, the printing processes, you can do pretty great things from an iPhone picture or or this, which is like these would be sort of like a second generation iPhone. That's about how good the camera is, and you can do a little sharpening, that kind of thing. I'm hoping I submitted these to something called the Fence, where they print on all-weather fabric.
Yeah.
And this picture was Coney Island, so I just wanted to mention, if anyone's ever out in New York, that's a must. And I think this is another one.
Oh, look at that.
Coney Island.
Those were the days. No mask. I mean, the lens is very wide that you're using, but still it seems like it compresses the space, though, don't you think? You know what I mean? Like a true wide lens would separate all these things a bit. It's doing something different, I think.
Yeah, I think all of these cameras they're just components that go into the phone or the other hardware, and I think the depth of field is the other thing I noticed with that, because they're almost like pinhole cameras.
Yeah.
Just because they're just so small.
Right.
So that's one effect. If you want anything out of focus in an iPhone picture, you've got to filter it. Otherwise, it'll just kind of pretty much capture everything great. So you're like starting out with the beautiful image and then taking away from it.
Right.
To make it, I guess, more artistic.
A question just came in here, and I think this is a relevant one for what we're looking at now. Do you go out with the intent of taking images, or are you going about your day and let these moments find you? Like when you were working on this, was it like you always had the glass on, or was it like I'm going out to shoot?
No, I didn't keep these on like throughout the day, or become, they didn't provide enough like help to my daily life, by the ability to like see an email come in in my eye, so I would definitely, I put these on and go out and look for things and spend some time, if I had free time or if I wanted to walk for a couple hours. So not as thoroughly as Garry Winogrand did. I know he's just out all the time. I have seen that clip you're speaking of. But whenever I had the chance, and it was just a fun thing to do. And of course, like look for certain times of day, towards the evening hours, was always good. And this is probably a more overcast day, but that was really nice, for getting nice, lower contrast black and white look.
Oh yeah.
Even lighting. This is probably Soho. Oh yeah, you can see Spring Street way up there in the corner. So, and then I don't know, just really really weird expressions on this group. Pretty random, I mean, I always identified to Winogrand's style of street shooting is like, it's really just these little slices that are here and gone. And so I think that's why that approach just takes a lot of shooting, because you don't have the chance to set up anything. You just have to react as soon as something happens. And you'll fail a lot at that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
This picture is amazing. The amount of things that are going on in it, I would think it was a composite or something like that. I mean, it's really hard to get all this stuff going on in a shot. I do think that the vantage point that the lens provides does do something unique. You know what I mean? Like there's something that doesn't look like I mean, it's probably the infinite focus, but usually that stuff just makes everything seem chaos. But it seems like it allows things to be like in the foreground and in the background, and these relationships can be there or something like that. I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this is what New York was recently too, because this is Times Square, so you know you would have that density,
Yeah.
um, and I think that's always going to help your cause if you're searching out the right street. Like this is a parade, for example, so there's just a lot more people out for the so I go and look for events sometimes too.
Right.
Um, the big events that were happening outside. Um, but now and then with another, I did use another camera for a while that would take pictures automatically, and so at that time I would just wait and see what happened later.
Oh, you would just be
um,
wearing a camera that would just be photographing.
yeah, yeah, that was not these pictures, but that I would just leave it on and then look later and say, oh, did anything interesting happen during this day? And
Right. Right. I mean, what
so
is the fun for you though? Was this as fun as it looks? Or is it
oh
in the editing or is it in the like where was the joy?
yeah, both both going out, that's really got to be the top part of it, because I think that's when you're most excited,
Yeah.
um and you're most excited about what you think that you accomplished, but then what usually happens is there's a little deflation where you start looking at images and some dumb thing happened, like there's somebody's hand in the wrong place, because I mean everything does just get flattened out, so you've got all those challenges when of appendages going out, and light poles and all the different kind of things that can mess up a picture when you're in a city environment, or just like the focus is off or the person looked away, all those other things. So but then there's the joy of editing, that you don't expect when you when you forget about even having taken that picture, or um, it's two different experiences, and I do think it helps to put that distance in. I mean, digital photography makes you lazier in some ways, and I one summer I did just I didn't use tape over the back of the screen, but I just willed myself not to press play for
Yeah.
like a whole trip in the summer, and I was like, I didn't, why is there that constant urge to do that? Because I ended up looking a whole month later at digital images, and I was like, wow, there's great things here. Usually I'm looking because I think that I haven't exposed properly, but when I did that experiment, I learned that, oh, you know I'm usually in the ballpark, so
Right. Right.
so maybe I should be looking a lot less.
Uh, oh,
um,
that's
but
interesting.
it's just so easy with a digital camera. You want to see it right away,
Yes. Yes. It's hard to
or
get.
you might need to, because you can't afford to mess something up, if it's a job for someone.
Yeah.
So
Commercially,
um,
digital reigns supreme. Um,
yeah,
but you are seeing more people who just do it for art's sake using film.
yeah,
Like film is climbing.
yeah. I like this just kind of expressions of the two people that, well, I mean, there's a group of people in the crosswalk, but two people in the forefront. Obviously, different worlds
Yeah.
from New York, but that's what has been great about living here. Right now, if you went up here today, you'd see, like, well, you might see a small crowd of people on the streets, but nothing like normal life. Um, This is, I just thought was really funny for the t-shirt.
Absolutely.
I only date models, and his, pretty sure the grandfather kind of cracks me up there with his sunglasses. So he would probably obviously figured it out, the dad.
Oh, figured out what you were doing?
But yeah, because I think he's really looking right at me. I know there's probably some ethical issues on having children in photographs on the street, a lot more so now than there used to be. I mean, I've read on blogs about photographers getting even beat up or run down by crowds, and just for going out and taking pictures at a carnival. Something people would have commonly done. So.
Yeah. No, things have gotten much more paranoid in that sense.
And I don't know if anyone feels like this is very, voyeuristic or something, but I've always felt, and I think of the tradition of street photography and the times that there's been court cases about it, usually the rule is you're on a public street, it's public, so.
Right.
So, no one was asked permission, obviously, because they're not even probably aware I was there.
Right.
And I know the ethics on that are changing all the time too. I think that will continue to evolve.
Yeah, no, I think so. Now, my class, I would encourage you to get your questions in that you worked on for your homework. As this is kind of, evolving here, feel free to feed them into the chat and then I'll propose them. And then a message from Adrian Powell. So PH488, please keep in mind that you're going to meet back in your classroom at 5 p.m. And it is, oh, you got 6 minutes. So if anyone in that class in 488 has questions, post them now. And then if you miss anything, this is going to be recorded, so it's all, going to be accessible as well. And Andy, I didn't mean to cut you off. You can burn as much time.
That's fine. This is one I should mention, because this is the Mermaid Parade. That, what also happens in Coney Island, but it happens every year. And this is just a blast. So, I don't know, how many of you ever make it out to New York. Just, well, definitely feel free to email me or something like that. But there's events that are like every year, you can go back to, and they're great to photograph. So this is from the Mermaid Parade, but off the parade route where there's just kind of parties and people hang out. I'll just keep going through because I'm not sure how many are left.
Yeah, and I'm going to look up, one of the students sent some questions in, and I'm just going to try to find them. Rochelle, is there any way you can put them in like something simpler?
Well, unfortunately, and sorry to interrupt, my laptop just crapped the bed right now, so I can't even get on my hard drive. I just have my cell phone right here.
Oh, well, can you just ask the question?
Yes. Well, one of my questions was, when I was researching you and looking you up, it said that you had done some photographic work for the U.S. Department of Education. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I was just really curious about what that entailed and what the scope of something like that looks like. And then another question I had was, I'm prior military, and then immediately, as soon as I'm seeing this technology that you're sharing, you did this project on, and I thought, wow, I wonder if he feels like this is going to become a mainstream thing, or if it's maybe too gadgety-ish for civilians. But if you see this becoming like, that could be a really big time technology that started being used in the military. So those were the two things I was really curious to ask you about.
Yeah, sure. I'll just do the first question. Yeah, working for the Department of Education, that was actually really great. It would just be a couple times a year, but the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, would be visiting New York, and I would just get hired for the day because they didn't want to come with one of their photographers. So it was freelance work, but it was pretty exciting because you know, travel around in this little bubble that they had, his, you know, his entourage, and you just basically be doing events, speeches, or visiting schools. That was the most fun. Visit elementary schools, and so you just get great pictures of him interacting with kids and things like that. And but there was a lot of legwork that went involved to where I could be a government contractor, and so you know, that's interesting too. They put you through the ringer with all kinds of forms, and you have to be on top of your renewals every year, or they won't be able to hire you. But that was then. I never worked for the Vaz.
Oh, Betsy.
So I know nothing about that. But when I was doing it, it was, yeah, it was pretty cool. And then, you know, the military, there is like there's a big connection with some of that technology. There's been heads up displays is what they call the screen that's built in there. And so, yeah, I know things like this are being used. Police in most cities wear the body cameras now,
Yeah.
which is like the little camera I showed in the New York Times from the very beginning, an evolution of that technology. I mean, I got really interested in, I still am, you know, greatly interested in that. You know,
Yeah.
my first intent is still something I'm working on, you know, but I think the technology might have to catch up a little bit to my ambitions on that. And you know, the capturing isn't necessarily the hard part. The hard part is resurfacing a picture that's going to be actually meaningful or useful to you. And so there's different people working on that from a software approach too.
I have one more question about the glass.
Mm-hmm.
My family actually works in the field of adaptive technology too, with patients with ALS and stuff. And you know, that disease really hits hyper creatives and people that are really, really intelligent. For some reason, it goes right to those people. I just see the potential for that technology being so great in opening up the world for people that are, you know, diminished capacity now, that maybe, you know, can't enjoy the quality of life that they had, just like how you were talking about your mom and stuff, and just a way to still kind of engage or capture or create memories and stuff like that. I'm gonna give my email, or give your email, to my family. I mean, I think for adaptive technology, that's phenomenal for people that have no way. In your project with the No Hands project, I mean, right there, you're just showing, I guess, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, there. You know, that's become my focus in life too. Like I have a company now that we work with the senior housing industry and voice technology, and use that as a assistive device. You know, it's Alexa, but we have our own software that goes with it and makes them more useful, and will speak slower to people, so it's a little more usable. And so, yeah, I mean, I've shifted away so much from being a photographer to working on this business. You know, it really is, glass didn't actually totally go away. They're using it for a few select enterprise sort of things. Like one is warehousing and employee training. I mean, there were so many different ideas that came out when glass was new, and I'm sure I can go out and find a video about quadriplegic using glass and being able to go on a hike and capture things like through the winking. You know, it's
incredible.
If you're paralyzed, you know, a camera is off limits to you until this. But so there, you know, there was a lot of potential and promise, and I think someday it's going to come back around. But they are still out there being made, but just in a really small and focused way. I think you have to have like a shipping company or something to get your hands on a new pair.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you.
So Andy, tell us about your company. What is your company called?
Yes, that's called Sound Mind, and it didn't come directly out of the earlier work, but you know, they're definitely related. So we were working with Google Glass, and it was about the same time 5 years ago that Amazon Alexa came out, and so we just started playing with it and created some skills, things you could do, and eventually it became a little more involved with helping an entire senior living facility manage the tasks of the staff and make sure residents could be able to get a staff member to come to the room when they wanted them, so like a call bell almost. And then what we've been doing for like the last 4 months is setting up video communication for individuals and their family members, because now people can't go and see their older relatives, and so these are personal assistants that everyone gets their own, gets to learn how to use it, and gets to be friends with Alexa, and so that's what we focus on. So it's not only people with Alzheimer's, but just anyone who's aging and maybe struggling.
Right. Right.
So, but it seems ironic to me that, you know, I've worked in images for my whole life, and now I'm in audio for some reason. But that's how things. You know, we didn't talk too much about the photo industry, I guess, in writ large. But you know, I feel like I moved to New York a little bit in the wrong era, a little bit after the heyday, and so I've seen a lot of things sort of go by the wayside. I mean, I know, you know, Timothy, you've had such a long career already and things, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, the period.
No doubt.
The period that you talked about, which I've lost track of now. There was one economic downturn that photography never recovered from. It seems like. What was that? 2008.
Well, there was recession.
Yeah. What year was that? Because you identified it in your talk.
That was 2008.
2008. Yeah, it was very challenging. Yeah, and I think a lot of people had to kind of pivot from there and figure out different ways. You know, wanted to stay in photography, to keep doing it and find ways to do it. And I know I did. You know, I had to change kind of radically. You know, then magazine industry tanked. I think since other industries have bubbled up, you know, and I know students are coming out of our school, and there's new entry points in photography. So I don't feel I never feel it's over, but I feel a certain phase is over, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like there's eras in these things.
But I think there's a lot of exciting things now, though, so that kind of offset it, which is, you know, that, you know, a picture can have more than just an image. It can have other information, you know. I think like video is really exciting. And I think the fact that it's just, you know, you don't need the $5,000 Canon or Nikon, and we're getting more stories from people, not just the you know, because even as I had this dream of like National Geographic, traveling the world, being a photographer, I mean, that's in a lot of ways that was a you know, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but you know, elitist, because there's only so many people who could get through that door, you know. And now we're starting to get a broader range, you know, more perspectives, and that's, I think, really good, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the way I kind of view it now is the magazine industry started to, you know, get very challenged, but then suddenly it was almost like everyone had their own magazine. You know, everyone had their own Facebook page or their own blog page or their own Instagram page or whatever these things are. And so the people have more voices now. I mean, more people have more megaphones than they've ever had, you know. And I think what you do with these things is really, you know, in your hands now. Hey, there's a couple questions here that have come in that we'll just catch you up with. Kawal has asked, to what degree do you edit these photographs? And Kawal, what do you mean by that? Do you mean the ones he selects, or do you mean in post-production, or what are you looking for?
So like the final images, like you said, you know, you take a lot of images and then some of them are interesting to keep for the final images. So I want to know how much editing in the post-production do you do for the final images?
Oh yeah. So I think editing can be pretty quick, because you just once you get in the rhythm of it, where you're doing the first pass of kind of saying yes or no, and then so you know, I think start out with a couple hundred and wind up with 5 or 10. I mean, I think that's a great ratio, and you're doing well. But then, you know, when I was doing a project like this, I just kind of edit in little batches and sort of keep a running folder of things that, you know, I want to come back and look at later. And, you know, this never really got edited into a final form. I think it'd take more work to do that. But for the processing, there's just the converting to black and white. I put a vignette on my pictures. I might get a little heavy with the vignette, I think, sometimes. And I do a little bit of sharpening and a little bit of contrast. But the conversion to black and white really takes care of a lot of it, and then it's just an easier manipulation because you're in monochrome, and you don't have to worry about if the green parts are interfering with the blue and things like that, you know.
You've got
you're getting a cast.
Yeah, you've got an awful nice film type of feel to this stuff, though. Are you using Lightroom, or are you just like taking the color out in Photoshop, or what are you doing? You know, because it looks like you know.
I use I use Photoshop RAW. So I open these are JPEG images, but I open them in as Photoshop RAW, and so then use that tool set. I've never figured out Lightroom. I have it, but I haven't become skilled at it.
Oh, really? Oh, Lightroom changed digital photography for me.
Oh.
Yeah, I could never like my digital, and then with Lightroom, suddenly I could like it. You know,
Oh,
as a
maybe
guy,
maybe I'll try it. I think I'll try it again.
yeah, you might want to look at it. Another question here is, I'm scrolling up. From Jean-Claude, do you always photograph with the sunglass lens attachment on, or would you sometimes wear the camera without it in the more obvious way?
I always wore the sunglasses.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. So it was always
There's a clear lens. Well, yeah, when I was on the street, and there's also a totally clear lens, and they sold prescription lenses even.
oh,
But yeah,
really?
I always use the sunglasses because just to not be seen. It's making me sound like such a spy or something.
Ah,
Um,
everybody's got their own
but
way, you know.
and these were Snapchat spectacles that came out, and these had a video camera on one side. Um, so I used these for a little while too.
Oh, that's
And
wild.
yeah,
Oh, interesting.
I mean, it's a really, I don't, I'd say the very fringe aspect of photography, the wearable cameras, but I, just got really fascinated by it and still am. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm always amazed that you can get the feet to work out or something like that. Like the way these people are like mirroring each other with their steps and with their wardrobe. That's what makes the shot. And it's got the taxi and it's got
yeah,
the Dunkin' Donuts and it's got the moody sky and all of those things, you know. So you're not like burning in a sky from another negative or anything like that. I mean, from another file.
no, but I like with a vignette, I use around the corners most
Yeah.
of the time. But yeah, there's happy accidents. So I mean, I know, for example, um, I don't have like a clear exact memory of taking this exact picture, but I can just tell from looking that I'm sure I saw them around down by around where the Dunkin' Donuts cup is, saw them coming my way, probably saw the traffic was changing there and just kind of got out into the street myself and paused right before. So I got to where I could tell my distances a little bit better
Right.
and time them out with the shutter lag that I knew was going to happen.
Mm.
Um, and the first digital cameras all had a very bad shutter lag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the Kodak digital camera or something. It's like you press it and wait 5 seconds.
Yeah, no,
Um,
yeah.
so so yeah, I learned my own techniques. I mean, that was exciting. I was writing my own book of how to do this, and I'd say there hasn't been a huge demand in the world for this, but it was exciting to me to see if I could learn that. I mean, I think I will go and use these again, but I know that I've got to solve a little some software issues on it before I can. It's taking pictures. I just can't get the pictures off anymore.
Ooh, that would be a challenge.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, but I know there's a way to fix it. I just haven't gotten to that.
right, right. Another question came in, Tiffany Griffith. Tiffany, you want to ask your question?
Sure. I was just asking, like, when you're shooting with your digital camera, what are you using? And then also, like, how do you feel about the mirrorless cameras that are starting to come out and the merge into those?
Yeah, I would really like to have one of the new cameras like the Lumix or Sony, but I don't have one myself. Um, uh, I use I use my iPhone quite a bit for anything now, but the larger body camera um, that I that I'm most familiar with is a Canon 5D.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what they're up to. I think 5D Mark IV.
Right.
And then the Canon 60 is a camera I like. That I don't have myself, but I'll rent one from time to time because that's just a stripped down camera, but from a like a 5D or one of the really big Canons they make, but it has just anything that I would really need on it, and the pictures just always look great.
Mm. Interesting. What do you use, Tiffany?
I have both those actually.
Oh,
I
you
use
do?
the 5D Mark IV and I have the 60 Mark II. I used to have the 60, and honestly, besides the upgraded features of flipping out the screen, I don't see much of a difference between the 60 and the 60 Mark II. They're both pretty similar.
I love the idea of part of what I was like trying to figure out with doing this is like, can you photograph with just basically without even having a camera, and just this is almost like I was like creating the picture by thinking about it, because I was just my mind is just processing, wink your eye real quick.
Oh yeah.
And so it's just unlike any other experience. And then the other kind that I used where I would take photos automatically, I mean, that was like, I was just literally doing nothing. And, I was like, this is amazing,
It doesn't sound very
How did we
fun.
not come up with this sooner?
Yeah, but was that camera fun? I mean, that's just like collecting rain in a bucket.
Yeah,
right?
but that was a lot more about the editing, a lot more. Yeah. So you just like leave it running for hours, and yeah, it's a lot lower ratio of anything you'd be able to pull out. That was called the narrative clip. So if anyone was curious about that.
Oh, interesting. So you have some of that stuff with you on this, correct?
I think at the very end,
Yeah.
and so I'll make it clear when that. I think we're getting this whole image set. So this is a Times Square sort of stopped on the moment, stopped at an intersection. And then this is a security guard, and she just looked over at me with her jacket's, one arm is on, one arm's off,
Yeah.
and like what an expression. So
Oh, it's awesome. And then there's someone taking a photo behind her, or a selfie or something like that.
Yeah. So cell phones you just really see in like every single picture now, or actually now I guess it's masks, but
Yeah.
it's those. I've heard of wedding photographers have just gone crazy. Oh, by the way, speaking of cell phone, he's another guy. But yeah, I've heard wedding photographers are just losing it because every single picture of the weddings they take pictures of have cell phones popping up in the
Oh,
frames.
people taking a picture. Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
very frustrating.
So this is a picture that I think is more like my own, where where I'd been going out to emulate Garry Winogrand, as I've been saying, but this I wouldn't say brings him to mind necessarily,
Right.
but I still think it has a place in this project, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So this is it's like a hybrid, but this one I'd say has more, that I brought more to the equation.
Right.
Just with this interesting sculpture and person with the big hat, you know.
Yeah, the lines and everything. Now, I wonder, let's imagine this project existed exactly as it existed, but you never acknowledged Garry Winogrand. You were simply a guy doing street photography in New York with Google Glass. Wouldn't that be enough? Like, and what I'm getting at is there's people doing street photography all the time whose work looks like Garry Winogrand's because he was such a strong voice, but they're not acknowledging it. They're just saying it's what street photography looks like. Would you agree with that theory or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If I hadn't made this connection at all, I don't think it would maybe be as interesting. I mean, I guess it's interesting to use Google Glass, but say you didn't even know that. I think there's just a lot of images out there, so I think it just become part of a big, this just massive cloud of pictures. Which, by the way, I think that's the other side of the coin is even though having photography be accessible to everyone is great, there's just so much now that I don't think you see. That I don't, I even wonder if we'll ever really even have an iconic picture again, because I can think of a lot of iconic pictures from my life, but they stop around the last few years. I don't think I've seen a picture that I still remember from 5 years ago, but because there's just pictures of people's lunch and it's ridiculous. There's just so much photography everywhere. I think it's hard for images to really rise up. But I did want to say about your question, I did think it was important to be explicit with the name or with why I was doing it, because that's what I was trying to do. I had this sort of images up in my mind and was so I felt I needed to just acknowledge and be explicit about it.
Right. Do you pay attention to other people doing street photography?
Yeah, I don't think as much, because I think it's moved. I know there's like big communities on Instagram, and that's where I experience most of it. But I'm not really in the community. It's just I'll just see it based on people I follow, and some of it I think is can kind of look the same. There's a big trend towards using film, and I think in a small on-camera flash, I see that a lot in color images on film, and that style seems a little pervasive right now. Like a flash and sort of sort of a more detached way of presenting the subjects, I'd say. But I don't know, I guess, big trends. I couldn't say, I couldn't come up with a name of who I think is like maybe the greatest street photographer right now. I guess I don't have knowledge of who's current,
Yeah, no, I don't. I like looking at the stuff though, but
yeah,
it's interesting. I almost wonder if it's a genre that will never really change. Like it's almost like it'll stay being as good as it ever was. Do you know what I mean by that?
I think it's going to be continuously harder to do. I mean, I think these blogs I've run across about about photographers being seriously injured, especially if they've taken a picture of a kid, you know, because you know, I think people are becoming a little more hostile, or think like, if you're taking a picture, you have an agenda, or that or that I should own my own image, or things like that. I mean, you know, when I did, I mean, doing street photography, I had run into that, with a camera or a digital camera, and people saying, you know, you need to delete that photo, or you had no right for that. And
Yeah.
I mean, depending on the situation, and if whether or not if I didn't care about the picture, I'd just delete it anyway.
Yeah.
No harm. But if I was like, oh no, I really don't want to delete that, and this only, I mean, this, it's not like this happened a lot, but I mean, it would occur sometimes. But yeah, I think people are more now on edge and more suspicious in general, and maybe meaner in general. I don't know. So I think it may change. It may become harder to actually accomplish,
Mhm.
without the subjects getting upset about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, I don't think anything will last on and on forever. So
Yeah.
um,
No, interesting.
well, here's another person who saw me, but you know, I just really like this, and the fact that he's much older. You know, here I think it is important, you know, that it was made through. So normally, like, I guess that's another rule of photography I broke with this project a little bit, is I've always heard, well, it doesn't matter what camera you have, it's how you used it, or you know, it's not the camera, it's the photographer, and phrases like that. But like, to me, this image makes more sense if you know that what he's seeing on the other side.
Oh, that he's seeing this weird Google Glass thing that maybe he's seen a
Yeah,
photo of once.
yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
This is one I just threw in last night, that I think I'd overlooked. Also not, you know, I think not really totally in a Winogrand style, but relatable, I guess. But it was, yeah, really the expression. I think there's some drama in this picture, an unknown worry that she's maybe expressing on her phone. And that I think is what's great about the form in general, is like, you know, it's as much the viewer bringing what they imagine has just happened, you know, because the photographer doesn't even really know. You know, they're just kind of snapping it and walking away.
Right.
Again, as I said, I think, you know, people are starting to have more of an issue with that. More of like, you know, people's just personal space. They're more guarded around now, I think, than in past eras.
Yeah. Yeah.
This picture is the so what they're all watching is like the arrival of the Pope going by. So this is another example of where, you know, just because I knew there's this big thing going on, so you know there'd be a lot of people out there, but I wasn't trying to get coverage of the Pope's car going by or anything. Like, I didn't care anything about that. It was just, would I find something that just was visually interesting, that you know, they're there because of the event, but the event has nothing to do with this this image, you know.
Right.
Helps you understand a little more what's going on. And this is another one where people are holding cell phones, but I feel like they could be like in the 70s, and the or maybe it's that this I said I was thinking about Garry Winogrand time traveling to the present, but maybe it's what if cell phones were sent back into the past and started showing up in his pictures, and
Oh, it
it'd
does
be
have
like that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that whole effect where history is different than you thought it was, or
Right,
something.
right. Now this looks like either
Um,
you cropped it or it's a different lens, or something looks different about this. Is it zoomed
I
in somehow?
I think it's the full lens, um, since on the edges. Um, but yeah, it may have been cropped on from the left and top a little bit. Um,
Yeah, it just struck me as a little different. Or maybe because it's all straight or something like that.
yeah, yeah, I'm not sure, but it really kind of I was attracted to the puppy that one woman is holding, and then with her striped shirt and then polka dot pants behind her. I thought that
Yeah.
really just showed up when going through the so you wouldn't get like contact sheets, but you just get a stream of pictures that would come up as they just get automatically uploaded. So that was kind of the way you'd edit.
Mm. Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
so another one is like, I think a little similar to the one just before, but it's just someone is wearing a sling, so it's just a little bit unusual from the typical street. Um, and then I also like the young lady on the left is just rather oblivious. Most people are oblivious on the street, and that's why I think this has gone on for so many decades.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the high heels and the fashion. Um,
This was like an earlier one, so I was, I think, still working out how far to be away. Um, but love the light that was going down the street, and the fact that there's a mother and child plus a mother with a stroller behind them.
right.
So little similarities. New York, I mean, by the way, a lot of it doesn't change over time. So that's
Yeah.
maybe another thing is like the buildings are by and large what they were decades ago, and
Yeah.
you always find businessmen. Um, but it's all the things around the margins, really tell you, or the hairstyles of people really tell you what era you're looking at.
Right. Right. Yeah, the city is really timeless. That city is.
Okay, and then yeah, I guess we are at the end of
Yeah.
these, but this is actually from the first time I was trying to make a Garry Winogrand picture with Google Glass, and um, probably one of the first ones I thought that it could be something. Um, so yeah, there's no special reason it's at the end, but maybe just because it was one of the first ones.
Yeah. So this
And there's not very many at night, I guess, because low light was a big problem. But this is in Times Square where it's kind of day during night anyway.
right. Oh, lots of lights. I mean, do you feel like when you do these projects that like you get, like say you said this is an early one, do you feel like you stumbled upon the image and then you're trying to like chase it or something like that? You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to get at the idea of the beginning of a project, kind of like Stanley's question was. Like,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you feel
Yeah,
like
I mean,
it's a happy accident and then it's like, ooh, I could make more like this or something like that?
yes, it starts as an experiment. And then when I did this, I know that I was still in the middle of the earlier project with the hands. And so it was just almost like taking a break at first and doing something different. So because I'd already been thinking about trying this more on the street, and I think like the very first time I did it was like a couple of years before, and you know, it wasn't working because people just wanted to ask me about Google Glass. But by this point, like a year later, everyone had just forgotten. I mean, I don't even know now when you heard about this talk today if anyone even still remembered it, but it just kind of was a big deal for a little while, and then
Yeah.
everyone totally forgot. So at the beginning, I didn't have the freedom at all because everyone just wanted to see it because they were hard to get. And so I just get peppered with questions about it. But then, you know, once the combination of the shades, as I showed you, and just time going by, you know, I was amazed. It was like hardly anyone knew I was there. So.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, times change and opportunities then present themselves.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to go out and you know, start adding to it again.
Oh, seriously? Oh, that's
because why not? I've still got these
interesting.
glasses and they still work. So.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. You don't have people on the street anymore, though.
That's right. So I'll need to wait.
Yeah. So you have some stuff from other cameras that you had been playing with as well. Is that true?
Yeah, just these final ones. And of course, any more questions I can stay and take. So you know, I was explaining to the way I approached projects was by having a new post every day. So that just kind of kept me honest and kept me going, and really gave me something to do. But once I come to an end, you know, I sort of want to think of something then new to start. So I felt I reached a little bit of a limit on these pictures, and maybe they were starting to repeat somewhat. And there was also like a loss of, so Google ended their program, and so shut down a lot of the support with it. So it became like less reliable to use the hardware. So I just, you know, decided at that point I would do a different project. So this is no longer called Garry Winogrand, but it was a continuation, but with a different approach. And so this is the camera that it was called the Narrative Clip, and it was based on that original camera that Microsoft made called the SenseCam for creating life logs. And so well, it took like a couple of years to even get that in my hands, because originally it was a Kickstarter project. And then I couldn't make enough so there was like, it was delayed in shipping 6 months, I'd say. And so I got it, and I was really excited. And so I think that's another reason why I said, oh, well, now I'm going to switch to this, because I'd been wanting to use that for a while. And I just added a few of these here. One thing that happened was, you know, I was wearing this on my shirt, and it has a little metal clip, and well, one day it fell off my shirt, and so that was the end of that. Because yeah, so I love these tiny cameras, but when they get so small, they can be easily lost. So that's a little word to the wise.
Yeah.
And the other thing that can happen is that the manufacturer you're buying them from, in this case, you also had to subscribe to, because that's how you got the images uploaded and downloaded into your feed. Well, they went under. They didn't have the finances to keep it going.
Right.
And so I wrote this email about how I'd lost my camera, and could you just please send another? And they wrote back, oh, we're bankrupt. So that was the end. But I was genuinely excited about this too, although the process was totally different. Then it just became about pure happenstance, because I wouldn't know when the camera was going to take a picture. I mean, I could know that it would within the next 30 seconds, but not when that was whatsoever. But I was like, this could be cool, and it's interesting. And I think the question I had with this was like, maybe the computer will end up being just on par with me and my as far as like when I decide to press the shutter, like who can say who's actually better, so this was just like, I called this a collaboration with the technology, because I was just sort of ceding basically any control except for where I went or where I decided to walk.
Right.
But I actually loved a lot of these too, and they some I converted to black and white, some I didn't, but I felt like these resonated more like I think a William Klein photo to me, which I thought was interesting. So very different. Like a little more personal, because I could be even closer to people and be pretty unaware. So
they seem so much more voyeuristic than the Google Glass images do. Like, they just look like you are literally spying on people. You know what I mean? Where the Google Glass images made it look like you were trying to make an interesting photograph. You know what I mean? And this looks like it's a different feeling, for sure.
So I was interested to see where this went, but unfortunately, just losing the camera itself will cause you some challenges.
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
And now I mainly, I'm very interested in video right now, and use the iPhone to make video. And that's been the longest project now that I've done.
Yeah, you post videos to Instagram every day, right? I mean, it seems like I see a video more than I see a still photo from you.
I've only posted videos since I started doing that.
Right. Now I'm wondering.
So
yeah, did you feel like you were I mean, do you founded a company, and your energy career-wise is put into that now, correct? So do you feel that, do you enjoy photography more now that you can do whatever the hell you want to do? You know what I mean? Or do you feel like, how has your relationship changed, maybe, is what I'm wondering, now that you can really do it for whatever you want,
I mean, my photography is really for myself. I mean, because if you're making photographs to sell them or for a job, it's quite different, it's but it can be, it's very rewarding in its own way, and challenging, but you're not the only one sort of driving the car, you know, there's expectations, or there's I guess I mean, I haven't done like a cover of a magazine or something, but then, you know, you got to know what shape it's fitting into, all these other kind of things, and commercials, commercial photography, it's like it's even harder because you know, the manufacturer of this car or whatever you're out to shoot has like really high expectations of how that's going to turn out. But at this point, you know, I don't think anything I do now probably even makes sense to other people. I mean, I just I've gotten more abstract and really not caring so much about a meaning or even something figurative. But it's a lot more of a pastime and pastime, diversion, or maybe waste of time even. But
yeah, I don't know. The output's pretty exciting to me. I guess I am wondering, I do think that everyone's aspiring to be like a successful commercial photographer and stuff. And I've never seen anyone who can do interesting personal work and work commercially. It's always one or the other. You know what I mean? I mean, can you think of an exception?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not in photography, but I think Andy Warhol did a lot of commercial illustration, and then also a lot of paintings. I think Robert Frank had great commercial work, but I think a lot of it ended up being rejected by his editors, the way I understand it, or certain stories he did. Or he was commissioned by the Rolling Stones to do a film, and then they hated it. So, and then more contemporary. I mean, yeah, I think, you know, there's just hundreds of interesting photographers out there. But if they can do personal and commercial equally well, I guess, I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've always thought there was a division. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, where it's hard. You don't really find the person who can do both well. You know, or maybe at different points in their career they can, or you know, like when they're I don't know. It's something interesting. I would have loved to seen how it went over when they would reject Robert Frank's projects. You know, I'd love to see how that went over. You know, So, is there anything you're working on right now, photographically?
Yeah, I mean, I've been interested a lot in the video on the iPhone, and I'd say these are videos, but they're shot to be almost still images because they don't move a lot, but things might move through the photo. So I think I'm just fascinated by still by technology and maybe by the idea of a moving still image or something.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of videos of like on windy days or things where there's just something flowing in the breeze. Not too many people. And I'm also interested in playing them back with music.
Oh, I thought, yeah, it seemed like your music was intentional. Like the imagery was kind of meditative at times, I thought. And then it seemed like the music selections were intentional.
That's what I've started doing, and I began that after I lost this camera that this picture was made with.
Oh, really?
And so then that project was just accidental, just from playing around I don't know why I've done it. I've done it like way longer than any of the other projects.
Oh, really?
So, because probably like 4 years now.
Oh,
And I mean, my goal is to make a film eventually, and that's how that'll be presented. Look it up on Netflix and sit in your home and just enjoy the images that way.
that's a fascinating idea.
Because I don't know how to display a video. You know, I mean, it has to be seen on a television or some other way. So.
Yeah, whenever I saw your work, I always thought it would be like projected on the wall of a museum in a dark room, and it would just be a loop, you know, this like atmospheric.
Yeah.
You know.
Maybe something like that. I mean, speaking of that, there was a show of Garry Winogrand in color that they did a great job that exact way at the Brooklyn Museum.
Oh, really? I missed that.
So he had tons and tons of color slides, but that was like costlier to work with. So he only showed color work at sort of an art salon where you just had an actual slide projector. So you know, I don't think they were really printed or published that much.
Right.
But they did amazing scans, and you just walk into this dark wing of the museum, and they were gigantic, and in color, and you're like, wow, there was just a whole body of work in color that people haven't been aware of.
Oh, that's wild. That is wild.
I think it will still be there if they open the museum again.
Oh, was that recently?
But,
oh, interesting.
well, I know it was going to have a very long run. So hopefully if they're able to open up that museum, you know, there'd still be a chance to see it. Or maybe I'll go to another city. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Hey, I think we can wrap this up. You were so generous with your time, and this was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for being open to this. Students, do you have any questions for him, or would you like to give him a round of applause?
Thank you for your time today.
Hey, thank you, Andy.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. It was just a great excuse to go back and look through these, and like you know, makes my day to be able to come and zoom into a class.
Oh, that's good. Well, thank
out
you.
there. So, yeah.
No, this is a great project, and I had been anxious to figure out how to do something with it. It was great with the mix here.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right, we will let you go. You and I will be in touch.
Yes.
But thank you, Andy. We will let you go for the night. Thanks for staying up late. Stay safe.